We are talking about ReversingLabs threat research from Q4 2024. This is our threat research roundup. I'm your host, Paul Roberts, Director of Editorial and Content here at ReversingLabs. I'm very pleased to have with me in our studio two of my colleagues who do amazing work researching threats, open source, and commercial code. First, Lucia Valentic. Lucia, welcome.
Welcome. Hello, Paul. My name is Lucia Valentic. I'm a threat researcher here at ReversingLabs, and my job consists of searching of malicious software online on different repositories. And when something interesting come up or something that we didn't talk about or see previously, then I write a blog about it.
We've published a lot of your research. You do amazing work, and we're going to be talking about some of the stuff you discovered in the last few months. Along with Lucia, we've got Carlo Zanchi, who is reverse engineer here at ReversingLabs. Carlo, say hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carlo. I've been working for several years here and mostly do threat hunting in open source package repositories and looking for threats.
And you've had a busy few months, both of you have. There's a lot on our plate that we're going to be talking about. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting discussion. So just before we get going, for those of you who aren't familiar with ReversingLabs, just wanted to take a minute and tell you about our company that we all work for. So we've been around actually for 15 years when we're one of the most trusted authorities there is around file security and software-based threats. So we have the world's largest threat repository with more than 40 billion with a B files, malware, goodware, grayware. And that number is obviously growing on a daily basis as folks like Carlo and Lucia find and identify new threats. Also, we're obviously doing this in an automated fashion as well. And that $40 billion repository is about 7 times larger than our closest competitors and is a huge resource. What most people don't know is that you may be, if you're a enterprise working within a company, an enterprise, and you've acquired security software, hardware, services, you may already be using ReversingLabs. More than 60 of the leading cybersecurity companies in the world trust our data and threat feeds to power the solutions that are protecting your organization. So you may already be using ReversingLabs technology. We've received accolades from our partners as our channel partners, and we've been recognized by Gartner as a leading software supply chain security provider. And we contributed content data to the 2024 Verizon DBIR. So we're out there sharing the benefits of our platform and what we've learned, and that's what we're going to be doing today as well as we talk about Q4 threats. So high level for the quarter, a lot of activity with regard to crypto apps, crypto infrastructure, and crypto mining, I guess, if we can count that as part of the crypto sphere. And in general, a lot of pretty serious campaigns targeting open source packages and developers using open source platforms, including some threats on the VSCode platform, which is fairly new. Most of the threats we've written about have been on platforms like npm, Python package index, and so on. But we're seeing those threats expand. We're going to be talking about all of those things here today. To start off, Carlo, I thought we'd talk about the aiocpa crypto package that you wrote about earlier in the quarter. This was a really interesting campaign, and it was a unique one because it was one where the attackers basically seeded what looked to be a legitimate seeming app focused on crypto, and then basically turned it malicious at a certain point after it had gained a fair number of users and subscribers. Can you just talk about this? Maybe just starting with what was what did they present this app as? Sorry, this package, this module as doing? What was it for in theory?
Yeah, it was presented as an asynchronous CryptoPay API client. So basically some useful tool for doing with cryptocurrency trading. And well, it wasn't unique. We have seen one or two packages previously this year which built up user base and later on published a malicious version. Both were, I believe, on npm. But it's a really rare type of attack. Usually we get malicious packages that are created either to typo squat or impersonate some legitimate package, and quickly they push one or two malicious versions and hope to gain as many victims in a short time. This time, the attackers took more sophisticated and slower approach to build a user base through legitimate looking application, and later on published, as you said, a malicious version, turning it raw. When I was first looking at the package, it also looked innocent to me because usually as you perform typical security assessment based on package popularity, number of commits and maintenance and such stuff, and when you look at file commits on GitHub repository of the maintainer, you can basically say, does that look malicious or not on the first look? But in the end, if you look at the behaviors, you can see that some malicious behaviors were introduced, and that's something that you need to look in details. So in this case, where attacker takes a more sophisticated attack, has more patience, and builds up a user base, and then turns wild, you need to perform advanced security analysis using some tools to help you detect malicious behaviors.
Right. And Lucia, I think we've seen this method before where a package, open source package, suddenly kind of flips from legitimate seeming to malicious. Is this something that we're seeing more of?
Yeah, I think this year, like last couple of months, we have seen a couple of NPM packages that were trying to pass as continuation of some other legitimate packages, and first few versions were clean. They were goodware. They were actually doing the things they said they were doing.
Right.
But after a few months, they just quickly changed and they published a malicious one. And we haven't seen this on NPM, at least before this year. We have just started seeing this. So this is, I guess, a new trend on repositories.
So Carlo, with the aiocpa, is there a way to say this without just saying letters? I don't know.
I'm also naming it later.
The change that got picked up by our scanner, by Spectra, was this patch of obfuscated code that was new. We've written about this, you've written about this many times, that obfuscated code in an open source package is something to be concerned about. Is it enough? Does it always correlate with malicious activity, or is there a reason why there should ever be obfuscated code lurking in an open source package? Is finding something like that just like, okay, this thing's gone bad?
Well, first, it's not always malicious sign. So there were some packages that included obfuscated code that wasn't malicious, but basically, if you want to contribute to open source package repository, then you should do that without hiding your implementation and ways how your code works. So basically, from my perspective, it's something that shouldn't be done, but it's not malicious on its own. It's definitely, if I was using some open source code, if I stumbled upon something that is obfuscated and that can't simply be de-obfuscated, I would likely skip that project and go use some other that is open source, truly open source package,
Sure.
which you can analyze.
Sure. And when you de-obfuscated this code, what did you find? What was it hiding?
Well, basically, this wasn't novel method of obfuscation. It was likely done with some custom tool. It includes several layers of compression and base64 encoding. You can write the obfuscator in just a few Python lines. Basically, what that code did, it took sensitive secrets used for crypto authentication of crypto payments and exfiltrated to attacker controlled location. So it's something that we often see in the latest year, because malicious authors are trying to steal crypto assets and are always trying to do that in the simplest way, which is stealing sensitive information, which can be used to regain access to your wallets. Sorry, you're muted, Paul.
Oh gosh. You also wrote that you saw evidence that these the individuals behind this malicious campaign were angling to try and take over another account on Python package index named pay, P-A-Y. Any idea what? So obviously they were targeting crypto. So, and this was another kind of crypto related package. So what was that all about? How was that working? And were they successful? And what do we know about maybe who is behind this?
Yeah, that's something we don't often see, but that's there's a legitimate functionality provided by PyPI administrator, where you can ask them to give you ownership of some discontinued project that hasn't been maintained for a longer time. I believe this was for several years, 2 or 3 years, no new published versions and anything like that. It wasn't a very popular package. You would expect attacker wanting to take over a popular package, but also if you try to take over a popular package, you will likely get negative answer from PyPI administrators. So if you manage to find a package that is not too popular, but has some dependencies and hasn't been maintained, there is a slight chance that you might get ownership of that package name, and you can contribute your code there. That way, you could collect user base that is already using that package as a dependency. And in this case, I believe since there weren't too many downloads of that package, it was likely just to get a more sounding name for malicious purpose to be used. Because as you said, aiocpa is hard to pronounce and hard to remember.
Yeah, not great marketing there. I mean, that aspect of the open source ecosystem where you have, discontinued packages that that are out there that just are not actively maintained, but that have a lot of legacy subscribers, or that have been discontinued and deleted, but the name is still out there, and maybe there are some dependencies as well based on the old name. Like, this is malicious actors are taking advantage of those types of, like, that kind of loose structure, right, to further their campaigns, right, to try and make them seem more credible, or like you said, actually get active users and development projects to use their malicious stuff.
Yeah, there are various type of unexpected behavior when you use package managers. There are always some functionalities of package managers that provide you extensibility of their basic functionality, which in end lead your dependency tree into possibly vulnerable state, because they are configurable in many ways, like using alternative package indexes, not only PyPI and similar stuff. And attackers are always looking for some of those caveats that can be abused for their purposes, like I don't know, high version numbers and similar stuff.
Right. So that aiocpa, as we said, that was a plant designed to flip malicious, not a huge user base, but we also wrote, Carlo, you wrote a piece on the compromise of Ultralytics. Let's just move the slide ahead. That was a totally different story. This is a really widely used package that was pushing out compromised versions. Could you tell us a little bit about the Ultralytics campaign?
Yeah, first thing, just to be clear, that's not something we discovered on our own because it was first seen on issue list on GitHub repository of Ultralytics. But basically, what happened there, their build workflow was compromised because they reintroduced a previously fixed vulnerability affecting GitHub Actions. So basically, I don't know, in June, August, one of the security researchers reported vulnerability in GitHub Actions workflow that was applicable to their build workspace. And that issue was responsibly disclosed and fixed by the user, by Ultralytics maintainers. But a few months later, it was reintroduced in one of the commits. So basically, they reintroduced already fixed vulnerability and got regression or vulnerability. And somebody noticed that and exploited that vulnerability to gain access to their workflow machines, build the environment, and later on, they managed to abuse, perform cache poisoning of their build artifacts, and finally get their compromised package into the PyPI repository from GitHub build environments, so in an automated way. So basically, it was a complicated attack. It was even more problematic that when maintainers thought they fixed the issue, they didn't revoke the leaked PyPI access token, and later on, 2 new versions containing new type of malware again appeared on PyPI repository, again in a very short time, in a day or two. So basically, you need to be very cautious when you fix that type of incident and perform security analysis of what happened to you.
So again, worst case scenario, here we got a package with 60 million downloads that has been compromised. Do we have any sense how many downstream users of Ultralytics were impacted by this, and what the consequences or what happened as a result of this attack in terms of attackers getting access to, again, dependent projects?
Yeah, it's hard to perform precise calculation how many users were compromised, because there are a lot of packages that depend on Ultralytics and use data dependency, and it's hard to make a sure assessment what is the impact. But let's say the good thing in this bad scenario is that the attackers only planted coin miner XMRig binary. They didn't put some tool for remote access or anything like that. They just pushed a miner. So there was a limited impact.
That, I mean, can we talk about that? Because I find that really interesting that you had a successful compromise of a very widely used open source project with millions of dependents, millions of downloads and thousands of dependent projects. And the deliverable was a coin miner, which is, obviously unwanted software, but not something that necessarily gives the attackers access to the compromised systems.
Yeah. In the next
Which would-
pieces of research we will discuss, it was the same thing. Attackers gained access to a legitimate package, popular legitimate packages, but didn't fully how should I say, didn't fully use
leverage it. Yeah, leverage right.
Malicious functionality they could plant. They took a limited approach. So I'm not sure why would anybody want to do. If I was a bad guy, I would likely try and do the most I can make from that. But perhaps they didn't. Again, it's not easy to handle a big collection of bots. If you quickly get, it's louder. Perhaps they thought this could be harder to detect or anything like that. But when you have downloading of second stage, it's always allowed. So I'm not
Suspicious.
sure why would somebody
Can we infer maybe that this is not a nation state campaign? It's more criminal or, kind of script kiddie type activity. I mean, yeah.
It's hard to say anything from that, but it's interesting that attackers didn't fully abuse and leverage the potential they had in that case.
Okay, I want to jump from this to a similar campaign that we wrote about. Lucia, this was one that you identified involving the Lottie player. So this is a different type of project, a little bit more kind of fun, but also widely used, pretty well established, and ended up getting compromised. Talk about how you came across this hack.
Well, I also want to preface this with saying that we haven't discovered Lottie player by ourselves, but there was community started noticing and talking about on issues on Lottie player GitHub page. Basically, all websites that use Lottie files, Lottie player package, npm package that has nothing to do with crypto or anything, they start noticing that those web pages started showing some pop-ups to connect Web3 wallets. So people were, curious what happened, and they started talking on GitHub issues, and it turned out that 3 versions of this npm package were compromised. And we decided to actually write a blog about it because it was very interesting to see difference between a legitimate file that is usually present in legitimate versions of Lottie player package and this file that was present in those 3 versions that were malicious. So it was very interesting to see. And if you look at a blog, you can see the difference between those 2 files, basically.
So you wrote that there was code within the player that you described as minified, and maybe just explain what that means, and that had been replaced with new code, also minified, but very different in nature, that included, these pop-ups and the external communications and so on. How would a maintainer for something like Lottie player become aware of something like that? Because in this case, it was unfortunately the end users of this app who were saying, hey, there's all this weird behavior, what's going on? That's not a great way to find out about a supply chain compromise.
Yeah, so basically the files, when you look at it, like the first look at the files, they look similar because both codes were minified. So from the codes, there were removed white spaces, enters, everything. So the code was smaller. But the new code was much, much bigger. It was the new file was 3 megabytes, where the old file was very, very small. And obviously, the new file had completely different function. It had function connected with crypto, which the whole package has nothing to do with crypto. So it was very unusual to see. And when users were seeing pop-ups, if they connected their wallets to if they are connected to their wallets, they would be connected to attackers' architecture. And apparently, actually, one user also got stolen, like some funds did get stolen because of this compromise, apparently. So, yeah.
It's really interesting. I mean, just the prevalence of malicious campaigns targeting, crypto wallets or crypto infrastructure, trading platforms and so on. I almost wonder if like developers should just be scanning any new submitted code. If you've got a non-crypto focused app, any code update that makes mention of crypto or crypto assets or infrastructure should be like a red flag to you, like, hey, there's something going on here. Somebody's trying to abuse my app.
Yeah, because the last couple of months,
yeah.
there was very big rise of crypto compromise, or packages that are connected with crypto, or packages that are not connected with crypto, but some function connected with crypto was injected in that package. So
Right.
it was very popular in the last few months.
Right.
Regarding what
So
you
I
asked
wonder
all about if new code should be scanned. As you mentioned, this wasn't our original, neither this nor previous one was our original research discovery, because in these cases, when you have millions of users and downloads, this type of change gets noticed quickly by somebody of user base. And usually, the compromise gets detected in a matter of hours before we get time to analyze the packages. But what's the problem in the whole development process? User tends to automatically update their code immediately after some new version of some package is published. That's something that shouldn't be done immediately. You should take some time, perform security assessment, use tools dedicated which can show you that something messy is happening with these new versions. Let's say in this case, you have 3 versions published in less than few hours. So it's something that's not expected, and most developers just put, okay, give me the latest version of the package, and when some update happens, it gets included into their automated build environment. That is the problem why people often get hit by compromises of legitimate packages which got compromised. So we shouldn't do auto-updating of everything. Again, there are some problems, but there are types like crypto, like version pinning and something like that you can use to prevent automatically updating all of your dependencies. And like said, we did research blogs because in these cases, our tool would help you in this way, because these compromises were allowed, and you can see good behavior indicators jumping out. As Lucia said, you had major change in file size, some unexpected behaviors appearing in this file. You can quickly pinpoint where the change has happened between versions. And you can, if you are either producer, publisher of code, or consumer of some open source package, if you perform security assessment of those packages, you could easily spot the change.
Yeah, there is a picture on the blog about Lottie Player where you can see like all the behaviors that are connected with legitimate Lottie is just are removed completely, and the new behaviors that are connected with Bitcoin, crypto, and stuff are just like introduced. And obviously, the big size change was also there.
Right.
So security tools
and like
can easily
yeah.
help you prevent this type of compromise.
Right. And like you said, Lucia, the Lottie player JS file that was compromised, tripled in size, with no clear, explanation for why it would have gotten so much larger. So that in and of itself, even not even looking at the code is something that you should sort of be saying, hey, what's going on here? Yeah. I wanted to just mention for the folks on the line, and there are a lot of you, that we are happy to hear your questions. If Carlo, Lucia are saying things that have the wheels turning in your head, feel free to use the Q&A feature here on Zoom and ask any questions that you might have. We'd be happy to answer them. Let's talk about the Solana campaign that we wrote about. This was something that we wrote about back in early December. This is a NPM library, again, links to blockchain and the cryptocurrency, really widely used, 51 million downloads, 400,000 weekly downloads, 3,000 dependent projects, and as we discovered, a successful supply chain compromise. Can we talk about what happened here and how this went out? I mean, unlike the Ultralytics, this seems like a sort of less sophisticated compromise involving a maintainer account. But what do we know about how this attack happened? Carlo, Lucia, either one of you.
So I believe this was also spotted by community because as Carlos said already, this Solana Web3.js package, NPM package, is very popular. So it gets noticed in a matter of a few hours. But basically, there was a compromise of account that had publish access to this account. And the compromise was a bit more silent because there was introduction of malicious function that would steal private keys. So whenever some user would use malicious versions, I would use, functions that do something with private keys. His or her private keys would get stolen and exfiltrated to some remote server that was hard-coded.
And I mean, this is it's theft of development tools and secrets, really common, kind of strategy by malicious actors, right, to gain access to sensitive assets and resources. What was there? I mean, we've been talking about kind of the red flags that we've seen in some of these other projects. Were there red flags here for the maintainers of Solana that something was amiss, either in terms of some of the heuristics that we've talked about with the other campaigns?
So there was a bit of a change to file that was malicious. It wasn't as big as with Lotifile Player, because with Lotifile Player we had all those behaviors missing and introduction of behaviors and like big size change. But here we can see introduction of some behavior that is pointing out to some weird top user domains. There is not a big difference, but it can still point out that, if you know your package and you know that you don't use some weird top domains and you see introduction of that behavior, it can still be suspicious to you that something is not right with the code.
Yeah. In this case, top level domain, I believe it was XYZ. So it's
XYZ,
it's something that should raise your eyebrows. You don't usually expect that from not necessary, but you didn't see it in the entire project. If you take all network links from the project and you don't see any other XYZ top level domain URL, and then suddenly XYZ top level domain appears in one of your files, it's something to look on. So again, this could be spotted, and some, if not by consumer of the package, maintainers could know that they don't use that type of domain in their project. So again, it's not just if you're a user, you need to perform security vetting. If you're a project maintainer or publisher, you should also perform security analysis of the project versions you publish to your customers, because you don't wish to compromise your customers.
Is there an easy way to do that from the perspective of maintainers, or even again downstream users of a package like Solana, to say, hey, this new update came in, but I'm seeing this unusual behavior, before you're in the bad position of having implemented it and pushed it out to your own users?
If you are part of a small company or individual, it's hard to perform security analysis on your own. You need to use tools, open source commercial tools, and that can help you in performing such. We have a site, open source Spectra Assure for Community, where we give, let's say, judgment of open source packages, and when you find something to be malicious, we mark it as malicious, and you can easily look at a package if you want to see if it's okay if malicious. Again, you need to give some time to researchers to analyze it. You can't expect to have that positive information in 1 or 2 hours. You need to wait for some time, but you can do that on your own if you wish to use commercial tool or anything like that and see what can happen. But again, if you are a small company, you will likely need to take some help from professional tools. You won't be able to do it on your own.
And it would definitely seem that if you're a small company or a large company, but you're working in or adjacent to cryptocurrency, your risk posture should be very strong, that you are almost certainly on the radar of malicious actors looking to get access to crypto wallets, basically.
Also popular target of nation state attacks.
Yes, in particular North Korea.
Yes, so keep that in mind. So if you are dealing with crypto trading, be on the watch.
Can we talk about the, well, first of all, let me remind listeners, feel free to pose questions, ask questions about anything that we've talked about or anything that's on your mind with regard to open source software risks, supply chain risks. Happy to answer those questions. Let's talk about the VS Code campaigns that we discovered this quarter. So this is kind of new territory for malicious supply chain campaigns. Can we talk about what we found and what's different here?
So throughout
Lucia,
Yes. So throughout the October, there was a campaign on VS Code, like few days, almost every day, more or less. There was a new package published on VS Code that was downloading malicious second stage. And first, those packages were trying to pass as Zoom applications. And later, they also trying to pass having the name of some connected with crypto. So this campaign was a month old. It was throughout the October, but the last few packages on VS Code were very interesting because they were pumping up the install numbers. So when you actually look at the statistics, how many VS Code extensions were downloaded and how many were installed, those numbers didn't match at all. So as you can see here on the picture, there was only 5 downloads, but there were like thousands and thousands of installs. So this is very interesting. And it was interesting because VS Code was very silent for a very long time. We had seen, I believe this last year in April, we have seen one campaign and we have seen this. But since then, VS Code has started to become more and more popular for malicious actors. But this is also interesting because this package, these extensions were, the code was also found on NPM. So we have found a package that we believe is made from the same author as those VS Code extensions, because there are many similarities between the NPM package and between those VS Code extensions.
And how is VS Code different from Python package index, NPM, in terms of how it's used within the development community? And does it make it more or less attractive to malicious supply chain actors as a platform for attacks? Or is it more just about how widely used it is versus, you know, obviously npm is incredibly widely used, and so attackers have stayed away from it just because it's a smaller platform, smaller audience.
So basically, VS Code extensions are extensions for VS Code IDE.
Yep.
So basically, VS Code extensions are not always checks, because developers and people who are developing malware and are using VS Code IDE, they are thinking, oh, I'm just not adding anything to my code. I'm just using plugins for my IDE. It doesn't matter if I check it. It doesn't matter what happens. It's safe. Nothing will happen. But that's why actually
It's not touching the code itself,
it's
right?
not touching the code. Nothing will happen.
Right.
But that's why VS Code extensions are very popular for malicious actors, because it's very easy to pollute your development cycle. And what's more actually interesting about VS Code extensions, they are very similar to NPM packages. In a way, they're basically NPM packages that are made to use as an extension for VS Code IDE. So any NPM package you can use as a module for your VS Code extension as a dependency.
Right.
And most VS Code extensions have NPM packages for dependency. We actually had a blog 2 years ago or 1 year ago that Carlo wrote about malicious NPM package that was included in VS Code extension, making that VS Code extension malicious. And now we had like different approach, like
right. And commonalities across all of these supply chain, like you said, malicious actors are manipulating, you know, downloads and ratings, you know, reviews to make these malicious packages that they're seeding look like they're established and popular and widely used. Kind of social engineering for developers, making them feel comfortable, like, oh, well, so many people are using it, must be okay. So many downloads, somebody would have found something if there's something there.
And not only that, but when you manipulate installs, you actually put your extension in the top. So when you search on VS Code Marketplace, for example, Zoom extension, you would get that malicious extension that had the most installs because they manipulated it. So their extensions would be the first one that user would get when he searched for Zoom, for example.
That again, if I can make just a little note to put some emphasis on why it's so important, because typically security teams in your organizations either limit your user rights on your development machine so that you can install much software on your machine. Okay, you get a predefined set of tools that you can install. They get installed on your development machine, and what you can do without supervision of security teams often is they enable you to install extension for your development tools. Again, if you use some code base, now everybody talks about supply chain, everybody knows that packages from open source can be dangerous, and that's why people are starting to scan them and look for malicious parts. But extensions for development tools that are already installed on your, let's say, like a shady spot that is often missed by security personnel in companies and shouldn't be taken so likely to be clean or trustworthy. So attackers are always looking for blind spots of security teams, and extensions for legitimate tools are often that spot.
So let's talk about that. I mean, as you mentioned, you know, developers and development teams need help assessing the quality and integrity of some of the packages, open source packages, and so on that they're using. That's something that we actually have a public resource for, the Spectre Assure community, which is, as we like to say, know when your software is malware. Carlo, do you want to just, this is a fairly, something we've introduced this within the past year or so, but do you want to talk about what Spectre Assure community is about and how developers can make use of our intelligence or threat intelligence around supply chain risks?
Yeah, basically, it's a web page where you can check, as you said, if your package, some of the dependencies you use in your projects are malicious or not, but many more things than just malicious. You can look at software quality issues, introduction of vulnerabilities into your code base that come with specific packages. You can look at if the package is well maintained, not well maintained, everything you need to know from security and software quality aspect of the packages you plan to use in your code base. Again, if you take you go to the community page, you need to do it manually to scan for different dependencies, but there's always paid versions which can help you do that in an automated way. But again, if you have some package you plan to use, and again, you shouldn't trust anything, and you want to perform security assessment, you can go and check on our page and see what we and other security research from the community have contributed to that page. Basically, what we do, we track what other people do and give credit if somebody else finds malware, and we try to include that information.
So here we've got to look at the, aiocpa package. Could you just kind of explain to people what they're seeing?
Yeah, basically, up there you have a short summary of the package description. You can take hash and examine it in any security tool that supports hash-based examination. And there you can see that package was removed and is malicious, and was removed for PyPI, and that it was detected by our ReversingLabs researchers. But below you can see that it was also detected by some of other security companies and open source community. So basically, down there you can see that the reason why package is dangerous is that it contains malware, and also that there were signs of tampering with the code base. And again, you can see if there are any critical vulnerabilities, medium in this case, there are likely some critical vulnerabilities, but that's less important if you stumble upon something that is malicious.
Obviously, this is this is a clearly malicious, tampered with package, but other packages you scan, it might show you that, you've got, hardening issues, right, with the code,
Or
lack of
secrets,
hardening,
leaks, or anything like that.
secret leaks, right.
Again,
So all kinds of,
if it's package, you're using somebody else's package, you're not so concerned about secret leaks. But if you are publishing your own package and you see that it has secret leaks, that would be not so good for you.
Okay, so a few minutes left. If you've got questions, speak now or forever hold your peace, as we like to say. And use the Q&A feature. Carlo, Lucia would be happy to answer your questions. I thought maybe just let's wrap up, Carlo and Lucia, by talking about kind of what the lessons to be learned from some of these campaigns are. I think I'm going to take a swing at it, and I'm interested in what you're saying. I think one of the high-level lessons is developers working within, open source environments or relying on open source, modules, which is pretty much every developer out there, need to move from this presumed trust to a much less trusting attitude and posture with regard to all of the components that they're using, right? It's just this assumption of like, it's coming from a really widely used project. It's can't have anything bad in it, or, oh, it's been, it does what it says it does, and therefore nothing else is going on that I need to be concerned about. So I don't know what your thoughts are about that, but it would seem to me like one of the clear messages is, as a developer, you need to really have a suspicious attitude about anything that you're using in your software.
Yeah, don't trust anything. Makes a security assessment of something, and if something was clean and secure in one of the versions, it doesn't mean that it will stay that in the new version. You need to perform continuous security assessment of what you do. And most important, best advice I can give you, don't perform automatic update to bigger version. Keep use version pinning or delay it for some time and do it in some small time windows. Sometime I stumbled upon research, I can't remember from who, but said that like 90% of compromises would be avoided if developers waited for, let's say, 2 weeks before installing a new version. Like that.
Lucia, final thoughts on, kind of lessons learned, or what you think developers, development teams should take away from the research you did?
Well, basically, as Carlos said, use version pinning because using latest can lead to compromise because that would immediately download the newest version. And also don't forget that VS Code extensions, just because it's plugin, it doesn't mean that it's completely clean, and it can't pollute your development environment. So you also need to check plugins, VS Code extensions, and so on.
And also, if you can't perform security assessment on your own, go and use tools. There are free tools, there are different versions of tools. Do some type of security assessment. Just don't fail. Okay, it's hard, it's expensive, I won't do any type because I can't afford it. So try and do at least something to protect yourself.
There are costs to doing nothing, right?
Yes.
Those could be very, very high. Okay. So if you liked what you heard here, we've got some more stuff either coming up or already recorded and there for you to listen to. Coming up in the immediate future, January 15th, we have a great conversation with Stuart Phillips and Tim McIntyre on the fastest MDR meets the fastest threat intelligence, and why WireSpeed chose ReversingLabs as its preferred threat intelligence provider. And then we've got some stuff already on demand that you can access anytime. AI in the software supply chain, a really great presentation exposing software supply chain weaknesses. We did Lucia and I had a conversation on the Yarrow rules and how to leverage those. So check them out. You can find them all on the ReversingLabs website, reversinglabs.com. And stay tuned. Thank you all so much for joining us, and really appreciate Carlo and Lucia, your insights, super valuable. And as you know, we'll be doing this again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.